Here yet? Yes, Fry, you're here with me. So we're doing Steins Gate 0, everybody. This is gonna be a field trip, not a field trip without the D. It's gonna be sadness. Yeah, I am already gonna hitting the I'm getting hit in the feels. Sorry for this field trip, everybody. Sadness. So, I know it seems a little weird to be playing Steins Gate 0 before I complete the original Steins Gate, but that's going to take us, like, forever to finish. But I figured, you know, why not play this one for a little while at least, before I finish the other one. I am not looking forward to the sadness, because I might actually be a little upset. This didn't come out in 2009, it came out in like 2016. What? Oh. Okay. Yeah, I gotta be Okabe again, so. And I'm probably gonna be, where is he? Oh, they don't talk, I guess. So this is actually, yeah, this is the first time I've ever played this game, like, ever, so. Okay, here we go. Hope nobody's too emotional about stuff, because I am, for sure. This is spoilers for Steins Gate, the original game. Okabe accidentally kills her in that timeline, which is really, really sad. The hatch opened. Bright light flooded my eyes. Where was I? My eyes narrowed. I could barely make out the summer's twilight sky. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to disappear. But someone grabbed my arm and dragged me out. Whoa, he's back already. It hasn't been a minute, has it? I didn't have the energy to respond to my own nickname. I fell to the ground and wrapped my arms around myself. Mayuri ran to me and looked down, her face worried. But her kindness felt like nothing but a nuisance. Don't talk to me. Just leave me alone. Fuck off, Fry. I'm not talking to you. What? You're covered in blood. What happened? So please tell me what's going on. Okay. Daru ran to the door that led back inside the building.
しっかりして、死なないで。大丈夫、怪我してるわけじゃないよ。
Stop it. Just get away from me. Leave me alone. I couldn't save her. In fact, I killed her myself. Right here, 3 weeks ago. I killed her. I'm a murderer. It didn't work. No matter what we do, it's not gonna work. It's all been decided already. It's not the same. The same as it was with Mayuri. No matter how hard I try, it'll all end up the same. No matter how many times I try, it will all converge back to the same result. The process doesn't matter. Whether you time travel or time leap, you can't go back and change the results of the past. I thought I understood that cruel truth. But now I was forced to realize it again, in the worst possible way. It's useless. Useless. It's all useless. I knew it. I can't save Kurisu. Yeah, I can't do the laugh. I knew this. I already knew this would happen. I'm so tired. I haven't rested in so long. I'm done. I killed her. I killed her. I'm an idiot.
クリスをさ、刺し殺しちゃったんだ。殺した？嘘、そんな。でも安心して、まだもう一回分タイムトラベルはできる。
Just leave me alone. No matter how many times I try, it'll all end up the same.
何言ってんの？諦めるつもり？オカリンおじさんの肩には何十億っていう人の命がかかってるんだよ。たった一回の失敗が何だって言うんだ。
There's just no way to save Kurisu. You can't stop the world-wide convergence. That's the reality of this world. I learned that a long time ago.
こうなったらビンタしてでも気合い入れ直して。ダメだよ。無理強いするのは良くないよ。こんなボロボロになってるオカリン見てられないもん。でもさ、このままじゃ未来を変えられない。どうして未来のことをオカリン一人に押し付けるの？そんなの重すぎるよ。オカリンおじさんには世界の観測者としての能力があるからだよ。オカリンが望んだわけじゃないのに。それにもう一度やったってまたオカリンが傷つくだけだって思うな。未来のことを人一人で変えようなんてきっと無理なんだよ。だからそのためのシュタインズゲートで。気持ちはわかるよ。でもさ、私も未来をかけてここまで来てるんだよね。どっちにしろ2036年には戻れないんだ。そう簡単に諦めるつもりはないから。オカリンおじさん、一つだけ忠告しとく。このタイムマシンに残されてる燃料は有限なの。さっきは往復2回分しか残ってないって言ったけど、実はまだそれなりに余裕はある。それでも移動できる時間はおよそ344日分。片道のタイムトラベルだとしても今から1年と経たないうちに7月28日には届かなくなる。覚えといて。 その日になったらさ、私はたとえ一人でも飛ぶよ。
Someone was saying something to me. But I couldn't understand the words. I didn't want to listen to anything. I just wanted to sleep. Just let this all end. Just let me go.
おかり、おかり、ね、おかり、もう頑張らなくてもいいからね。泣いてもいいんだよ。おかり、あゆしーはそばにいるからね。おかり。
I don't know if Mayuri's words were the reason why, but the tears started to flow. I decided to forget everything. Ever since that day, I stopped going to the Future Gadget Lab. Absolute zero. Oh, that's neat. Depressing, but neat. It's 3 months later, roughly. UPX, the new symbol of Akihabara, was located right in front of the station. In the hall of the fourth floor, preparations have been going on all morning for the ATF Akihabara Techno Forum convention. Universities and labs from both inside and outside the country would work together to put on special seminars and symposiums at irregular intervals. My school, Tokyo Denki University, was participating as part of its industry collaboration efforts. Students were required to attend these seminars and submit reports to their instructors. Otherwise, they wouldn't get credit for their related classes. In addition, I was supposed to help one of the lecturers, Associate Professor Izaki. Excuse me. I had just gotten a list from the reception desk at the shared lobby. I was waiting to check off the names of the students who were coming to the lectures. There was still some time before the seminar started, so the lobby was mostly empty. None of the students on the list were here yet. I was bored, but I couldn't do anything but wait. The old me could never have imagined doing something like this, but impressing Izaki was part of my new goal in life. Victor Condria University. Yes, that was my new goal. Izaki did a lot of joint research projects with them, and knew a lot of people there. The best first step to getting there, my brain could come up with was being his assistant. Also, this convention was holding another seminar at Victor Condria University, after the one held this summer. Of course, that interested me too. Summer. An image of her as she was then flashed through my mind. I was trying to get to Victor Condria so that I could learn about the work that Kurusu Makase had been doing. I wanted to try to do it myself. Of course, I wasn't a genius like Kurusu. I knew there was no way I'd be able to get to do exactly what she did. But if I could do even 10% of it. Honestly, I'm amazed that I've recovered so well. I thought that to myself and chuckled, just as a voice called to me from across the lobby. Huh? I looked up and saw a young girl approaching from the elevator hall. She was short and petite. Everything about her was so small. Oh, it was small, excuse me. I could kind of make out a few of the curves that didn't appear to be until after puberty. So at least she wasn't in elementary school, but maybe middle school? For someone with such a cute face, she clearly didn't care about her appearance. Her hair wasn't styled and it poured down her back. Even I could tell her clothes weren't very fashionable. This is the ATF seminar. Clearly not a place where a middle school girl belonged. she'd probably just come to the wrong place.
そんなの分かっているわ。何度同じ話を繰り返せば気が済むの。
This is the first time you said it to me.
私にとってはあなたで4回目よ。この場所に来てからね。
Well, excuse me, princess. Ow. Irritated, she pulled a card out of her jacket. It was one of those IDs given out to invited guests. Her name and the name of her workplace were written on the front. Huh? Victor Conjure University, USA. Brain Science Institute. Victor Conjure University, USA. Brain Science Institute? I looked at the card and then at her, and then back to the card. Then I looked at her again. I finally realized. Oh, so that's it. Where'd you find this card? Thanks for bringing it back.
その話も4回目よ。
She sighed and showed me another card. This one was a photo ID from Victor Conjure University. Huh? What? It was the same ID I'd seen Kurisu holding before on another world line. A photo ID on card. Yeah, that was definitely her. Sure be nice if we could see it.
ヒアジョウマホって読むの。私の名前、ヒアジョウマホ。漢字でもローマ字でも誰も読めた試しがないから、先に言っとくわ。
And you're from Victor Conjure University Middle School?
寝ぼけるなら夜にして。大学に中学生がいるわけないでしょ。
That's true. Then you skipped a bunch of grades? Unlike in Japan, it wasn't uncommon for Americans to skip grades. Kurisu had made it to university at age 17. But still, a girl this young working in a university lab?
一つ確認していいかしら。
Sure.
あなた今、少なからず衝撃を受けてるわよね。こんな小さい子が信じられないかしら。それとも、この年齢ですごいの方。
She got me.
高校をよく見なさい。
Oh, there we go. The girl, Maho Hiyajo, pointed out part of the ID with her slender fingers. She was born in 1989, and it was 2010, so... 21 years old?
つまり立派な成人女性よ。中学生じゃないのよ。もちろん小学生でも幼稚園児でも。
I see. And then she puffed out her chest. There wasn't much to see, but I could imagine her saying, "They look bigger when I'm not wearing clothes. They're huge." Oh, no, sorry. I apologize. I couldn't believe it. She was older than me. If Daru were here, he'd be dancing around screaming, "Legal lolly..." Oh, he'd be dancing around screaming, "Legal lolly for the win."
まあいいわ。世界中どこへ行っても同じ目に遭ってるから。
Yeah, I'm sure.
何か言った？
No, I didn't. Still, the Brain Science Institute? That's where Kurisu worked. Which means this person might know about Kurisu. I held back the impulse to start badgering her with questions. I looked at the pamphlet with the seminar schedules. Victor Conjure's lecture was the last one for the day, and was clearly intended to be the biggest. Was this Maho Hiyajo girl to give the lecture? A lecture, excuse me. Just like Kurisu had done at the summer convention. No, wait, that's wrong. That never happened. Kurisu Makase never gave any lectures over the summer. that happened in the Alpha World line. The world line I inhabited now. Before the summer convention, she'd already... Are you giving the lecture today? I looked at the pamphlet again and saw that the lecturer was a man named Alexis Leskinen. Alexis Leskinen. Professor at Victor Conjure University and the chief researcher of the Brain Science Institute. The topic is artificial intelligence revolution, huh? Yeah, that sounds interesting. I will. Oh, the staff room, right? I lead Maho over to the elevator hall and showed her where the staff room was. I had no reason to hang around her any further. I said goodbye and was just about to turn around. Just then, the elevator opened. A woman emerged. The instant I saw her face, every hair on my body stood on end. Gasp. Oh. Hello, Moeka. Moeka Kiryu. It was all I could do to keep myself from screaming. Calm down. This is just the Beta World line. Mayuri is alive. Moeka's not going to kill her. Our eyes met. The eyes on the other side of her glasses were as dead as ever, and it was impossible to tell what she was thinking. I frantically averted my gaze before she realized something was wrong. She tilted her head for a second, but quickly lost interest in me and turned toward Maho. Even in this world line, Moeka still only spoke in faint whispers. The two of them disappeared into the staff room. As I watched them leave, I took a deep breath. I tried to calm down, but it wasn't working. Moeka Kiryu. Is it going to be you again? It was a terrible feeling, like a cold finger tracing the wounds in my heart. And that night when the terrorist threat shut down all the trains in Akihabara. That awful night when I knew just something was going to happen. Are you going to do it again? Are you going to do it again? Here? Or was I just imagining things? Was she just a magazine reporter now instead of a CERN rounder? No. Even if Moeka was a rounder, she had nothing to do with CERN anymore. CERN wouldn't be watching us. I took another deep breath and grabbed some of the anxiety meds in my pocket and swallowed them down with some mineral water I'd bought ahead of time. It would take 15 minutes for them to kick in. Those 15 minutes were always pretty rough. I laughed at myself a little and sat down on one of the reception desk chairs. The table was filled with leaflets, pamphlets, and other things for attendees. I got a message, I think. Things. Yeah, no problem. Ah. Maybe she wished she could see it too. Maybe a little too hard for you to follow. Excuse me. She has her own little emojis. I wonder if they answer the phone. Oh, those are the contacts I have. Leaflets, pamphlets, and other things for the attendees. My eyes wandered to one of the pamphlets. Nakabachi Theory and the Genealogy of Pseudoscience. This pamphlet was for Professor Izaki's seminar. Nakabachi Theory. The paper he'd announced in Russia. That paper held the key to creating a real time machine. On that day, July 28th, Nakabachi had stolen the paper from Kurisu, his own daughter, and left with it. I knew that. Only Nakabachi and I knew that. Still spoilers from Steins Gate 1. I flipped through the pamphlet. It was a brief introduction to the many forms of pseudoscience and fake scientific discoveries that had emerged since the start of the 20th century. On its own, it did make for interesting reading. At the end of the pamphlet, Nakabachi theory was introduced as nothing more than another entry in that long list of fakes. So Dr. Nakabachi's time machine theory had been completely ignored by the academic world. All the glory, fame, and power he'd wanted so badly that he was willing to get rid of his own daughter, he didn't get any of it. And I'd heard rumors that after the announcement, he'd been imprisoned in a Russian lab. To make it even funnier, he thought he was getting a VIP treatment. For a short time, there were essays and interviews in bogus academic journals. Even there, it was obvious it had all got to his head. The ironic thing was that the Nakabachi theory was completely correct and completely revolutionary. The Russian government was worried about it leaking, and the SVR was doing everything it could to keep it under wraps. But under the surface, there was a full-scale information war beginning over the paper. The time traveler from 2036, John Teeter, had told me so, which meant it had to be true. Was World War III really going to happen? There was no point in thinking about it. Just a little more before the drugs kicked in. I closed my eyes. Several hours later, the convention was going well. After Professor Izaki's seminar, most of the students from my university went home, but I killed some time and came back. I wanted to hear the Victor Condria lecture. I headed to the hall with plenty of time to spare and saw Maho Hiajo coming from the staff room. She was with a very tall foreigner. Was that Alexis Leskinen? It didn't seem like an American name, but maybe he was an immigrant like Kurisu, or at least descended from one. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the looks on the faces were so serious I couldn't help but listen. Since they were both speaking English, I could barely make out any of it, but I could tell from their voices that it wasn't a pleasant chat. Huh? Wait, did I just hear the word makise? I hated the fact that I couldn't speak English. If I had known this was going to happen, I would have gone to an English school. The two of them walked in the waiting room for the lecturers. It was located right next to the UPX theater. I put together the few fragments I was able to understand. Fire at Kurisu's house. Mrs. Makise is all right. Robbery. The police called off the investigation. Why was the FBI there? It didn't make sense. I think that's what they were saying. Kurisu's house? Did they mean where she lived in America? Her mother should still live in America. Is that where the fire was? And then words like robbery and the investigation was called off. I really wanted to know more. I stood there and worried until it was time for the lecture to begin. With nothing else to do, I went inside the theater. I could tell earlier by looking at the size of the crowds going inside, but it was a very high-energy crowd. The atmosphere was clearly different than Izaki's seminar, which was mostly students there for credit. The place was nearly full with a crowd of scientists and people who wanted to learn about cutting-edge technology. Victor Condrius researchers had published a slate of papers in Science recently. And gotten a lot of media attention. Maybe that was why. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. Were there any open seats? I found a single open seat at the edge. But when I looked at who was sitting next to it, I moaned. Hello, Moeka. Gonna text me? You again? Moeka Kiryu was there. She was speaking to no one, but just typing endlessly into her phone. I'd once named her Shining Finger because of her incredible typing speed. And she was fast as ever. Who was she talking to? I didn't even want to imagine. I quickly turned away and looked for another seat. Dr. Leskinen reached the podium almost at the exact instant I sat down. There was a huge wave of applause. But when they saw the tiny little girl come up next to him, the applause faded into confused murmurs. Maho must have expected this. Her expression didn't change in the slightest as she stood next to the professor. In fact, when she took the microphone from the professor and looked around the theater, she looked like she belonged there.
Ladies and gentlemen.
First, Dr. Leskinen began to speak in English. When he made eye contact with Maho, she began to interpret.
Thank you for attending.
皆さん、本日は私のセミナーに集まってくださって感謝します。
I am Alexis Leskinen.
ビクトル・コンドリア大学脳科学研究所のアレクシス・レスキネンです。専門は脳信号処理システムおよび人工知能理論になります。そして私は助手の比谷城真帆です。同じく脳科学研究所で教授の指導に沿って研究をしています。よろしく。
The audience started murmuring again. That was the same way I responded when I met her. Oh, that'll happen, yeah.
では早速ですが、私たちの最先端研究の一端をご紹介します。テーマは人工知能革命としましたが、これからデモンストレーションするシステムはおそらく皆さんの想像を超えたものではないかと思っています。
Dr. Leskinen stood in front of the laptop that had been placed on the podium and started to type.
このパソコンですが、研究所のスーパーコンピューターの一つと接続されています。あ、まだプロジェクターには映さないで。
One of the staffers was about to display the laptop screen in front of the projector. Excuse me. Some kind of important program must have been booting up because Maho Hiyajo stopped them.
すみません、まだ開発途中なんです。非常に美的センスのないプログラムが画面いっぱいに溢れ返っています。こんなチープなプログラムを見られるのは恥ずかしい。裸を見られるよりもね。
Huh.
この中にエンジニアの方がいるなら理解していただけますよね。
Some of the audience got the professor's joke and laughed.
Anyway, while this finishes,
起動するまでの間、このシステム全体の概略を説明しましょう。
There was another projector in the center of the stage. A diagram appeared on its screen. And at the top of the diagram was a Japanese translation for the general audience. An analysis of neural pulse signals relating to memories stored in the temporal lobe. Gasp. I knew that title well. In fact, I was sure I could never forget it. It was the title of an essay written by a 17-year-old genius and published in Science. She completely analyzed the nerve impulse patterns that govern human memory and used it to digitize memories themselves into data. And she had used that to invent a time leap machine right in front of my eyes. Though, none of that had actually happened anymore.
we've actually been featured in a
サイエンス誌に掲載されたので、
some of you
ご存知の方もいるでしょう。
with the project. It was proposed by a very talented
これ
Japanese
は
member of our team.
私たちのチームにいた天才的な日本人研究者によって提唱され完成されたものです。
Human memories are stored in
人間の記憶は
particularly
大脳
in the
皮質、
temporal lobe.
とりわけ側頭葉に記録されます。いわゆるフラッシュメモリみたいなもの。
The part of the temporal lobe
そのメモリに記憶を書き込む
One second, let me check to see if my package got here yet.
側頭葉にある海馬傍回という部位になります。
Excuse me, I'm back now. Dr. Reskin had pointed out the diagrams of the brain and the hippocampus on the screen.
The brain works by transmitting
脳は
electrical signals between
ニュー
cells
ロンと呼ばれる
called
細
neurons.
胞の間を電気信号が伝わっていくことで働いています。
Neurons.
What we call memories are
記
just
憶
those
というのも
electrical signals and
実
they
は
are
こ
controlled
ういっ
by
た
the
電気信号の伝わりの一つなのです。その働きを制御しているのが海馬傍回と言ってもいいでしょう。
In other words,
つま
electrical
り
signals passing through
電
the
気信
brain
号が
control
海馬
cells
傍回を出
create
入り
memories.
することで記憶は作られていくんですね。
That was a foundation for
そこで
listening.
マキセ・クリスはこの論文を書いた日本人研究者です。
And excuse me, I mean, Ms. Makise, one of our
マキセ
suggestions.
研究員は考えました。
You see here, electrical signals, signal patterns. There's
海馬妨害を通る電気信号が電気信号のパターンと大脳皮質の
Maho started to have trouble with her interpreting. She was getting confused. No matter how good you were with languages, interpreting for a long period of time had to be difficult. I had once read an article on the internet that said even a professional can't do it for more than 20 minutes. International conferences and live broadcasts from overseas are actually handled by a team of people switching off. Or maybe, was she having trouble because Kurusu's name came up? Dr. Letskinen saw she was having trouble and cut himself off.
すみません。
Ms. Makise, focus on the patterns
マキセ
entering
研
and
究員は
exiting the parietal cortex.
海馬妨害を出入りする電気信号のパターンに着目しました。
By analyzing those patterns,
そのパ
she
タ
was
ーン
able
が
to gather data from
大
regions
脳
in
皮
the
質
cerebral
の
cortex.
どの記憶と対応しているのか解析を行って完全なデータを得たのです。
This data allows her to take
これによって
the memory signals
記憶という曖昧でアナログなものを電気信号のパターンの組み合わせというデジタルなものに変換する基礎理論が確立されたのです。
Ms. Makise published her research
これが
in several journals.
サイエンス誌に掲載された彼女の論文です。
And now, based on her theory,
そして現在
our team has developed a system
私たちの
of
チームは
human memories as digital
そ
data.
の理論をもとに人間の記憶をデジタルデータとして取得するシステムを開発しています。
A wave of whispers swept across the theater.
In other words,
それはすなわち
this system allows human memories
人
to
間
be
の記
stored
憶を
and
コンピューターに保
accessed on
存しそれを活用するシステムということになります。
The whispers turned into a low roar. I see. So even after her death, Kurusu's research was being carried on. Of course, maybe it was natural it would be that way. That it would be? Excuse me. That was the basic theory for time leaping, which I had proved myself, even if I could never prove it to anyone else in the Alpha World line. My memories had been turned into data and stored on a computer. There was no doubt about that. And what Dr. Leskinen was talking about right now was the basic technology required for that process.
At present, we are
現
attempting
在
to apply this
私たちが行っているプロジェクトは
First is
主
memory
に
enrichment.
2つです。1つは医療分野への応用です。
The slide on the projector changed.
For the application, we've
こ
been
ちらは
collaborating with
精神生理学研究所と共同で行っているプロジェクトです。
Psychophysiology. Oh, that's a big word.
by passing data from a computer
コ
to
ン
the
ピューターに
particle
保存
journals.
した記憶データを
We can rewrite memories
海馬
to
妨
the
害
original
を通して再び元の脳に書き戻すというもので
Incredible!
Someone who looked like a grad student in the front row shouted. Dr. Leskinen didn't seem particularly put off by the interruption. Maho continued her interpretation.
You believe it? I know how you feel.
信じがたい
Thinking
で
the
す
same
か
thing if I were you.
その気持ちは理解できます。私も皆さんの立場であればそう言ったでしょう。
But let me just ask you.
しかし
Can you imagine
この研究に私たちは手応えを感じています。これが実用化できればどんなに素晴らしいことでしょう。 例えば老化による記憶障害、あとはアルツハイマーなど、そうしたものへの対処療法が期待できます。
I'm going to look at some of these words. Symptomatic treatment intended not to cure the cause of the disease, but to alleviate its symptoms and relieve pain. Painkillers and fever reducers are examples of symptomatic therapy. Neuron. Okay, so we got a bunch of those.
患者の記憶をデータとして自動的にバックアップしていくのです。記憶が失われたとしても、その都度 PC にアクセスし、脳内にデータを再インストールすることが可能です。それによって忘却の進行を食い止められるのではないか、私たちはそう考えています。最終的には会話ボークから PC 内の記憶データに常時アクセスできるようになるでしょう。そうすれば脳機能が失われた状態、例えば脳が激しく損傷したり萎縮してしまった場合などですが、そのような状態でも変わらず脳機能を維持できます。あたかも外部ストレージと同じように。
A strange feeling gripped the hall. Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. I skipped a bunch. Where's the backlog at? Strange feeling gripped the hall. Part of it was shock and the feeling that they were witnessing the announcement of incredible technology. Part of it was skepticism that a system like this could ever actually work. Part of it was the revolution at the idea of playing around with a human brain like that. An excitement born of all these things passed from one member of the crowd to another. Dr. Leskinen raised his hand to encourage questions.
どうやら2つ目のプロジェクトをお話しする前に質問を受け付けないといけないようですね。できる範囲でお答えします。どうぞ。
Many hands were raised. I could tell that there was a wide age range of people interested. Both young and old were raising their hands. Dr. Leskinen pointed to a questioner. This was the first question. Sampling would be required when digitizing analog memories. Does that mean any information would be lost? The professor nodded as he listened to the question in Japanese and began to respond in English when the speaker finished. Maybe he was able to understand Japanese, if not speak it.
その質問を言い換えると、オーケストラの生演奏を WAV のデータに保存する際、生演奏のすべてを完璧に記録することはできないと。確かにその懸念はあります。現在の研究で最も困難な問題の一つです。脳内のネットワークが神経伝達物質のオンオフだけで、つまり二進数的にデータのやり取りをしているのであれば簡単な問題でした。それはデジタルデータと同じことだからです。しかし実際には伝達物質や電気信号は脳内でアナログ的に変化することが分かっています。この問題に関しては今のところより高いサンプリングレートでデータをサンプルする方法しか手段を持っていません。音楽の話で言えば 44.1kHz よりも 48kHz、 48kHz よりも 96kHz でサンプリングするといった具合です。
It's still digital data, of course.
それによって
but the information
デジタルでありながら
as close as
アナログデータに近い情報を得ようとしています。
Little by little, the mood in the room was turning to disappointment. People were beginning to wonder if this was just a pretty theory that wouldn't work in reality. More questions came. All of the questions were skeptical of the professor's theory, and many of them seemed to be outright challenging him. I started to get upset. This was Dr. Leskinen's research, but it was also Kurisu's. I knew better than anyone that it worked, and the sight of so many people refusing to believe to give it a chance infuriated me. Were these people really scientists? I tried to keep myself under control and looked back toward the podium. Was she mad? She certainly looked disappointed. Dr. Leskinen was very polite with the rude questioners, acknowledging the problems with the theory. She was very different. Her anger was starting to seep into her interpreting, too. I felt a kind of kinship with her. The question and answer session continued. Yeah, in my home country, you were considered an asshole. Yeah, you're just digging yourself further into that asshole hole, dude. That was the one thing I couldn't ignore. Objection! The two people on the stage and the entire audience all turned toward me at once. How do you know it won't work when you haven't even tried? The world's full of technologies that people never thought would work. It's now because people overcame those problems. Criticism alone doesn't help anything. The whole theater went silent. But I didn't regret standing up. On the stage, Maho Hyajo was staring at me in shock. And as for Dr. Leskinen, I saw a flash of white teeth as our eyes met. Yeah, that's a Japanese VA playing an English character. He started to applaud. Huh? Why was he applauding? That just makes things embarrassing. Maho translated the professor's words for me to hear.
The only time when it is possible to showcase when your experiment is a success and you say, "We did it."
We did it.
We did it. It's great.
それだけで十分だそうですよ。
I'm sorry. I lowered my head and sat down. I thought I was calm, but I guess I let my emotions get away from me. I hadn't grown up at all in the past 6 months. If Kurisu was here, she'd make fun of me again. I could feel the rest of the audience staring at me oddly. It hurt. If I could have left, I would have wanted to, but I was too interested in hearing the rest of Dr. Leskinen's talk to move.
And anyway, moving on.
それでは皆さん、そろそろ次に。
Oh, first, a round of applause,
でも、
please, for our
その
great
前
friend.
に勇敢な彼に拍手をお願いします。
Oh, please, no.
Men like him are what
彼
drives
のような
scientific
挑
progress
戦者こそが
and up the
科学を
wall
進歩させ、
remarkable surveys.
あっと驚くような理論を作り上げるのです。
彼ならきっと第3のアインシュタインになれるかもしれませんね。ちなみに第2のアインシュタインはここにいるちょっと小うるさい私の助手。変なこと言うのはやめてください、教授。
The audience chuckled. I chuckled too. Sheesh.
さて、ここで私はしばらく通訳をお休みさせていただきます。これから私よりも優秀な通訳が登場します。
Oh, this is gonna be sad.
これが私たちのチームが今最も力を入れている2つ目のプロジェクト。
Yeah, I know who the interpreter is. Sadness.
アマデウスシステムです。
When she finished speaking, Maho walked to the back of the stage. At Dr. Leskinen's signal, the PC screen was displayed on the projector. And then I heard a voice.
皆さん、初めてお目にかかります。
Gasp. The murmuring got louder than before. But it felt more uncertain than surprised. On the screen, I could see a detailed 3D model of Maho, the girl who'd just been interpreting.
ちなみにこれは映画などで有名なドリンクワークススタジオに作成してもらったモデルで。
DreamWorks. Maho Hiyato chimed in from back of the stage.
声については私のボイスサンプルをデータベースにして日本の山名が作ってくれました。
This was CG? It sure looked real to me. The professor said something into the laptop's microphone. And then a 3D model of Maho Hiyato on the screen opened its mouth.
私は平城真帆です。正確に言うなら78時間22分前の平城真帆から派生した存在ということになります。
If you listen carefully, you might be able to hear something slightly off. But it sounded far more human than any artificial voice I'd ever heard.
先ほどから皆さんの質問を聞かせていただいていました。教授はどうして私を早く紹介しないのかと、とても以前から感じていましたが、どうも教授は人が悪いようですね。まったくだわ。
The Maho Hiyato on screen spoke with a slightly irritated expression. And the Maho Hiyato by the wall nodded in agreement. Dr. Leskinen simply smiled. What was going on here? What part of this was their big project? The rest of the audience didn't seem to have any more of a clue than I did.
皆さんの多くは疑問に思っています。人間の記憶をデータとして取り出したり、それを保存したり、そんなことが本当に可能なのかと。それでは私は一体何でしょうか。私は78時間23分前の平城真帆の脳内から取り出された記憶を持ち、そのデータをベースにして動いているのです。
What did she just say? The professor said something else in rapid English and asked the Maho on the screen to translate it. But she, if she was the right word, hesitated and went silent. I looked at the real Maho, and she was responding exactly the same way.
教授、今のは。教授、今の発言はセクシャルハラスメントとして大学に訴えてもいいでしょうか。
Dr. Leskinen laughed cheerfully and responded to her. Conversation was in quick English, and over half of the audience couldn't understand it. The real Maho sighed and took back the microphone.
教授はですね、私に対して、いえ、私の記憶で動作しているこのアマデウスに対して質問に答えてごらんと言いました。いつ頃までパパとお風呂に入っていたかとか、
gross.
初恋はいつだったかとか、何でも答えられるだろうと。ああ、もうそれ以上通訳しなくていいわ。恥ずかしいからやめてくれないかしら。 私はそういう質問には一切答えないわよ。
The professor said something else, and the Maho on the screen groaned and turned
ク
away.
レジットカードの番号なんてもっと言えません。
Huh.
あと1週間前に着ていたパジャマの色なんて覚えてるわけないです。
What was this? It was so natural I couldn't tell at first, but this was something unbelievable, wasn't it? It felt very different than a typical AI, I could tell that much. It wasn't answering the questions it was given because they were embarrassing? Was it programmed to respond like that to certain questions for the purpose of this demonstration? It was possible that's all it was, but that conversation wasn't programmed in advance. The rest of the crowd seemed to reach the same conclusion I did, and the whispers started to turn to surprise.
ねえちょっといい加減このいたずらな子供を何とかしてくれないかしら。何をしたいのか理解はできるけどとにかく恥ずかしいわ。
The copy of Maho was complaining to the original. It felt like I was watching a pair of twin sisters talking.
いたずらな子供ではなくレスキネン教授が面白がってなかなか説明してくれないので代わりに私がお話しします。
Maho walked back to the professor.
皆さんもうお分かりかと思いますがアマデウスは自分が話していいこととそうでないことあるいは話したいことと話したくないことを自ら判断して喋っています。
「 Sorry, I just got my package in the mail and Duke threw a fit.
私たちはアマデウスにそういったプログラムを一切施していません。
I knew it.
彼女は与えられた私の記憶からそれを独自に判断し、自律的にそういう行動をとって。
That's a good word too, autonomous. The Maho on screen suddenly took over for her.
そしてこれは先ほどの医療分野への応用とは方向性が真逆になってしまい、研究所内でもずっと議論が交わされていることですが、私は不必要な情報をいつの間にか忘れてしまう。というか、記憶の引き出しから出してこられなくなるのです。皆さんと同じようにです。例えば、1週間前に着ていたパジャマの色。確かにそれを知っていたはずなのに、今は思い出せません。そのような情報は生存していく上で必要がないからです。これも皆さんと同じです。このようにアマデウスは記憶のインプットやアウトプットが人間のそれと非常に近いのです。これは私たちも驚くべき結果として研究を重ねている最中で、まだ詳しくは解明されていません。
As Maho finished up, Dr. Leskinen took the microphone back. She resumed interpreting as he continued the lecture.
さらに私たちを驚かせたのは、アマデウスが意図して嘘をつくということ。何らかのトラブルやミスではなく、わざとそうするのです。嘘は人間が他人とコミュニケーションを取る上での一つの手法です。アマデウスもインプットされた記憶を自律的に検討し、必要であれば自分や他人のために平気で嘘をつきます。教授、誤解を招くような言い方はやめてください。嘘をつくのに平気なことなんてありません。私だって両親が咎めます。
Dr. Leskinen cut off. He seemed to be hesitating. Maho didn't seem especially surprised by this. Maybe she knew the reason. But the moment passed and the professor continued. And Maho translated his words like there was nothing shocking about them at all.
このような検証を続けていくことで、最終的に私たちはアマデウスに人間と同様の魂を宿すことができるのではないかと考えています。
I was stunned. A soul? Should one of the leading brain scientists in the world really be using a word with such a vague definition?
これこそ本当の意味での人工知能ということになります。
The whole hall got very quiet. And it was sheer chaos for a while after that, as everyone tried to debate their own personal theories with Dr. Leskinen at once. It was thanks to Izaki that I was able to get into the reception held after the ATF was over. They told me there was a dress code, so I went all the way back to my parents' house to get a suit to change into. At first, all that effort paid off. as Izaki introduced me to some of the country's top researchers. Riken, JAXA, IMS, etc. But before long, Izaki ran off to suck up to some of the university professors. And I was left completely abandoned. So like some of my teachers. At my own personal target, Dr. Leskinen, was surrounded by a bunch of famous scientists. It didn't feel like a mere student would be welcome. So all I did was stand around and eat some of the buffet by the wall. To be honest, I couldn't tell if the food was any good or not. Whenever my glass got empty, a smiling waiter was always around to fill it up again. So I found myself drinking more than I intended. My stomach was already so full it hurt. The whole place felt like it was another world. Someone's texting me. Can't believe we got to go to fancy party. Die in a fire, Mr. Fancy Pants. Okay. The whole place felt like it was in another world.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm really not cut out for this. The exact moment I spoke, I heard a girl next to me say the exact same thing. Surprised, I looked over at her. Our eyes met. What was a middle school girl doing here? And then a moment later, I realized it was Maho Hiyajo. She was wearing the exact same outfit she'd been wearing during the lecture. A lab coat in a place like this? That's just what the old me would have done. Maho was clearly out of place. Why? Because she was still wearing her lab coat. Why are you wearing a lab coat? I couldn't help but ask. She was sure she had, but she hadn't. And that's why she was standing in the corner trying not to attract attention. I'm Rintaro Okabe. I'm a student at Tokyo Denki University in Professor Izaki's class. I handed her one of the business cards that I'd thrown together after Izaki told me I needed them. She grabbed one of her own out of a stack and carelessly put it into my hands. That was a huge help. Huh? Oh yeah, you said nobody could read it? I looked at the card and saw that the pronunciation of her name was written in unusually large letters. That was probably because of how people kept screwing it up. Yeah, I've heard that name before. You're from Okinawa. You're not by any chance Maho Miyagi, are you? Half... No, you don't look half Japanese. Quarter Japanese? Huh. And then the conversation stopped. I'm a terrible conversationalist, honestly. The old me would have gone full Chunibyo and started ranting about conspiracies and magic powers. Whether the other person cared or not, can't really call that a conversation. I had no idea what to say to somebody I'd never met before. I've been working at becoming a real adult, even buying and studying men's magazines, but none of it really helped. Without anything to talk about, I looked over at Dr. Leskinen. He seemed to be giving a lecture on neurons to a bunch of scientists. I'm sorry about today. Oh, for interrupting your lecture. Oh no. You sure that would have been a good idea? You heard what the professor said. The scientist should remain calm at all times.
今のは科学者としての発言じゃないわ。だから構わないのよ。
It must have really ticked her off because she grabbed a cocktail from a passing waiter and gulped it down. Her cheeks turned a pretty shade of pink for an instant, but no longer. She might have had a high alcohol tolerance.
だけど、やっぱり良くないわね。反省する。ああいう批判は言い方こそ悪いけれど、それでも事実には違いないんだもん。私たちの研究がまだ無謀の域から出ていないと言われれば、確かにその通りよ。
Really?
取り組まなくてはいけない課題が山積みだわ。さっきセミナーで話した以上にね。例えば記憶データを元の脳に書き戻すことができても、それを脳が利用できなければ何の意味もないの。記憶があっても思い出せない状態、つまり記憶喪失の脳と同じになってしまう。
As Maho spoke, I remembered. I remembered all the lectures and theories that Kurisu had given me when she was making this time leap machine. If I remember right, when people try to access their memories, the signal goes from the frontal lobe to the temporal lobe, right?
ええ、トップダウン記憶検索信号ね。
So then... And then I started to talk, remembering what Kurisu had told me about her theories as I went. When I used specialized terminology whose meanings I barely remembered, Maho would tell me what they were. And so finally, in the process of writing these memories back to the temporal lobes, if you send the pseudopulse you copied along to the frontal lobes, the memory search signal will function properly, I think.
あなた、それを自分で導き出したの?
What? No. Maho looked back at the business card I'd given her.
脳科学専攻じゃないわね。ということは誰かに？それとも論文で？うん、それはないわ。まだ論文にはまとめられてなかったはず。
Did I say something wrong?
そうじゃなくて、私の後輩がね、全く同じ理論を提唱していたことがあるのよ。
Super
ど
sad.
のスタッフもずっと懐疑的だったけど、彼女だけは絶対に証明できるって言い張っていたわ。結局実証試験に進む前に彼女はいなくなっちゃったんだけど。
Damn. That's... Should I tell her? Should I tell her about me and Kurisu? In this world line, there's almost no connection between me and Kurisu.
どうしたの?
I made up my mind. If I wanted to follow my dreams, I needed to act. Actually, it was Kurisu who told me about this theory.
え? 今なんて?
Kurisu Makise told me about it.
クリスがあなたに? いつ? どうして?
When she was over here as an exchange student, we became friends, and she talked to me about this stuff. Of course, that was a lie. Kurisu and I became friends in the Alpha World line, not this one. But a small lie like this was probably okay.
そうだったの。あのクリスが。ありがとう。感謝するわ。
Oh, this is already really sad. Her words surprised me. That was the one thing I didn't expect to hear. For what?
彼女と友達になってくれてよ。日本に来てたっ 人でたった一人で勉強していてもきっとつまらなかったと思うから。
All we ever did was fight, though.
あの子らしいわね。絶対に負けを認めない。
Oh, she does the Kurisu face. It's so adorable. The winky face. Never. She'd argue for hours. She'd tell me all the time about how she was going to give me a lobotomy and rip out my frontal lobe.
まさかそんなこと。クリスなら言いそうね。
And then there was this one time in an alternate timeline where she threatened to cut off my arm. I'm just kidding, right? You need to discipline your researchers better.
その点に関しては認めるわ。陳謝します。
Oh. Huh? She smiled, or so I thought, and then all of a sudden she started to cry. What's wrong? I didn't have any better ideas, so I grabbed my handkerchief. She didn't seem to know why she was crying herself. And neither did I. Had I said something during the conversation that set her off? Are you okay?
平気よ。ごめんなさい。
This Okabe is gonna sound different because this is the depressed Okabe. I am sad scientist. It's not cool, son of a bitch. She didn't take my handkerchief. Instead, she took a tissue out of her pocket and wiped her eyes. Oh, hey! What? Oh, he even looks like a douche. I turned around and saw Dr. Leskinen smiling and quickly striding towards me. Oh, you're up close. He grabbed my hand as he got closer. The handshake was incredibly forceful. His hands were as big as bear paws. No, not just his hands. Standing in front of me, he looked even bigger than he had during the lecture. I'm pretty tall, but he was at least a head taller than me. In real life, I'm actually 6 feet tall, so this guy must be like 6'6". Professor, Uh-oh. It was all so sudden that I couldn't even think of an introduction. And wait, did he just speak in Japanese? Oh, no, this is...
違います教授。私が勝手に。彼は関係ないですから。
God, does he ever put his hand anywhere else? He looks like douche Tamaki from... like a douche version Tamaki from Oran. Maho and I both denied it as much as we could. But I didn't know why Maho was crying, so I couldn't come up with any excuses. I started to panic even more. So basically,
クリスです。彼とクリスの話をしていたら、いろいろ感情が溢れてしまって。
God.
クリス？君はクリスの友人？
Yes.
岡部倫太郎さん、学生だそうです。
Maho introduced me. Dr. Leskinen had a gentle expression on his face as he gave me a slow hug. I felt like I was going to suffocate from his massive arms. Somehow I could tell it was his way of remembering Kurisu.
そうですか。そういうことなら、魔法。
はい？
ミスター・オカーベに合わせてあげたらどうかな、彼女。
まさかアマデウスを。
ここで彼に出会った偶然、その幸運を大切にしたいじゃないか。日本にいる間、彼にテスターになってもらってもいいよ。
本気ですか？部外者なのにそんないきなり。
クリスの友人ならば部外者ではない。そうだろう？
ですが。
What were they talking about? I had no idea, but this was my chance to build a relationship with Dr. Leskinen. I didn't want to blow it. I'd love to help.
Nice!
He patted me on the shoulders and smiled. It was an innocent smile like a child's.
じゃあ詳細は
I feel like he's gonna be the villain in this game. What do you guys think? Another scientist was calling him, so he wandered away. Maho was shaking her head in disbelief. What's he talking about? Meeting Amadeus? Being a tester?
コンベンションでやったデモンストレーション。アマデウスは私の記憶を使っていたんだけれど、アマデウスのデータとしてもう一人分研究者の記憶が保存してあるのよ。
Huh? Another researcher's memories. What did that mean? When I finally figured it out from Dr. Leskin and Amaho's conversation, my heart started pounding. You can't mean... her?
そう。アマデウスの中にはマキセ・クリスの記憶が保存されているわ。8ヶ月前のクリスだけれどね。
And that's it for the first part of Steins Gate 0, and I got a little emotional, I'm sorry. Hope everybody likes it. Bye.